I have been a potter for a decade this year. I started in 2014 when I was a fresh baby out of art school, and I decided on a whim that I was going to start an Instagram and become a potter. And I have done that. I'm now full-time and I have found success, and I've done various pottery related things, from obviously making and selling pots to writing a pottery book and starting a pottery YouTube and teaching online courses, things like that. I have found success. However, I would approach it differently if I were to start today or a couple of years ago or in a couple of years. You know, it's sort of a different ball game now, and I'm going to share with you today some thoughts of what I would do differently. To start with, if I was doing pottery for the first time and I fell in love and I really enjoyed it and I just wanted to keep doing it, then I would decide if it was a hobby or if it was something that I wanted to turn into my career. However, I would protect that hobby very, very dearly. I leapt into pottery as a career because I was fresh out of art school, as I said, and I felt the pressure that I needed to find something to become my bread and butter so that I could become a successful conceptual artist in the field of textiles, actually, weirdly. Now, I don't really do any textiles work. However, what I found was pottery is actually quite hard to be your bread and butter. It's really difficult. The sacredness of my hobby being monetized kind of took some of the joy away from it for me. And if I were to start now and fall in love with it all over again, I would think very carefully about how I approached that. Maybe it can just be an expensive hobby. You know, you don't have to make it pay for itself. We live under capitalism, and capitalism has taught us that everything needs to be monetized, but it doesn't. You can just enjoy something for joy's sake. You can go to your job and then after work, you can go do pottery and relax and unwind and find peace. As soon as you monetize it and make it your job, that peace is sometimes a little bit harder to find. So that is something that I would be very careful about, and maybe I would just stop there. After you've decided maybe you are going to monetize this, then think about your studio. Are you going to be able to stay in a shared studio, for example, where the costs are much lower and you're sharing resources, you're sharing the kilns, you're sharing the wheels, maybe you're sharing clay and glazes, things like that. Is that going to be sufficient, or are you going to need to spend more money to find your own studio and buy your own kilns and buy your own wheels and get all your own equipment? If that is something that you see kind of being the road to success, then you're going to need to make a bit of a business plan, and you're going to need to work out how those things are going to pay for themselves. That's quite difficult in itself, and so you need to think about which the next step is the products that you're going to make. If you are sure that you want it to become your career, then what I would do next is practice a lot. And by practicing, I mean don't sell anything for a while, get good at what you're doing and find a style. So for me, I was able to kind of throw a whole lot of shit at the wall and see what stuck. And I found my style slowly through that way. I think I was selling way too soon because I did feel like I needed to monetize what I was doing. I think I was putting some random stuff out there and stuff that I wouldn't be proud to see now. I think if you are new to the game and you're looking on Instagram or Pinterest or TikTok, wherever it is, looking at social media to find inspiration, and you end up kind of making work that already exists and it's another potter is making that work, then you're not going to find success. You're not going to find your style. You're going to find their style replicated by you. I think it's really important to replicate sometimes in the process of learning, but I think it's important to find your own voice, because your work isn't going to sell if you are just duplicating someone else's work. It's not going to be true to who you are and like what you like if you're just doing something that already exists. Because if you're new, you're probably going to be doing it worse as well. No offense to you at all. I just think that you have to find your own thing. Decide what you like to wear and the colors that you love and the pieces of design that you like and the artwork that you like, and draw inspiration from all of that to make your pieces. Are you making functional wear? Are you making sculptures? Are you making pieces for galleries that kind of bridge the gap between the two. It doesn't matter what you're making, but it has to be really true to you. And then you're going to find more success through that. Once you've kind of found your style and found your voice, it leads on nicely to the next thing that I would think about, which is deciding how you're going to sell your work. So for me, I've gone down the social media route, I've gone the direct to customer route, and a little bit of wholesale on the side. And what does that mean? What does that mean for how I market my work? It means that I do a lot of work on social media. You may look at potters or artists or whoever, influencers who have loads and loads of followers, and you think, damn, if I just keep posting, I'm gonna get there. But that's not necessarily true. I put so much work into social media. I think I spend half of my time doing pottery and the other half of my time making content, making videos, thinking about Instagram and my sales and my admin, things like that. But they're kind of both part-time jobs, and I have done that on purpose because it's how I sell. It's where I reach my customers. Social media is an incredible tool, but it's also very, very saturated now by other potters and by other makers and artists and influencers. So it's hard to find a place there. And I don't envy people who are starting now. I started 10 years ago when there wasn't that much noise on social media, and so I found kind of an audience straight away. Now the way that I approach it is I'm more strategic. Again, like when I was finding my style, I was just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck. Same thing with socials when I was beginning, because I think everyone was doing that. But now I actually have a strategy and I more or less stick to it. If you don't know how to find a strategy, this is just a quick side note. I am doing some social media consulting, so if you do want to sell on social media, then get in contact and I can send you some more details. But maybe you don't want to sell through social media or direct to consumer. Maybe you want to sell via a gallery or via wholesale or via shops only. If you want to do that, then social media is a waste of, well, it's not a waste of time, but you can spend less time on it and more time on building relationships with galleries that you like and curators that you like, and kind of finding that community through building relationships. If you want to sell at markets and fairs, then it's kind of the same thing. You want to spend time building your relationship and your customer base, and it's not necessarily through social media, it's through turning up to those events. And maybe the first 2 or 3, it's kind of sunk costs and you're not selling anything, and then the third, people recognize your work and then they're going to buy it and they're going to invest. For example, I don't know how necessarily you're going to do it or how you'll find success, but it's a different route to the social media, website, online route. You know, they're kind of different things. Same thing with restaurants, or cafes or whatever. If you're making work for wholesale, and that's kind of different to shops and galleries. If you're making stuff for a consumer, but it's a different style, then again, you're gonna spend your time building those relationships with the chefs and the restaurant owners and the people who are kind of in that world. You need to be known in that world. Maybe you're gonna spend a little bit of time and money and resource on PR so that you can get some press and you'll find customers that way. There's kind of different ways to approach it, and obviously it's all kind of the same end, which is selling your work, but you can kind of choose where you're going to go with it. And I think if you try and do all of them just like kind of replicating other people's work, you're not going to find success because it's not true to you and you're not spending enough time on one thing to properly commit to it. The last point I want to make is think about community. If you are going to make this your full-time job and you found yourself in your own studio by yourself, you are going to get really lonely. Or if you're working in like a home studio by yourself, something like that, if you're not surrounded by people, it's really, really hard. It's hard to stay accountable to yourself. It's hard to stay focused. It's hard to be alone, you know, even if you're an introvert, it's really difficult. So I would suggest making sure that you meet other potters, meet other creators, meet other artists in your area, and somehow you work with them or you get a coffee with them, whatever it is, but you need to have community. I think it's going back to social media a little bit. I've found community online, but in real life, I have now a studio mate. My friend Ali has moved in with me because I was really lonely. She needed a space and I needed a buddy. I got a coffee this morning with my friend who's also an artist, Sarah. just to catch up, just to make sure we're okay. When I'm not in the studio, I'll work from either home or like somewhere else, and I'll often do that with a friend because it makes it easier to kind of share the burden of loneliness, but also you can just like talk about an idea. Even if they're not a potter or if they're not in your field, you can discuss something and kind of work out if you're on the right track or not. Being alone is really hard, and it's important to foster community and foster relationships and make sure that you're not doing it alone. We are all together, but we're all quite separated in this day and age. So just make sure you protect that. That's not something I would change necessarily, but it's something that I've learned along the way. I've had probably 5 years alone in my studio, and I didn't foster that community, and I found it incredibly hard. So yeah, that's more an advice, a tip, a side note, if you will. All of these things are kind of similar to how I did it back in the day, except I think I probably took the scenic route to get where I am now. I did everything a little bit slower. I did everything a little bit like hit and miss, and had luck on my side. And I think, you know, you probably could find success now as well if you did the same thing, but because you're starting later and there's already lots of people in this world, then you're going to need to compete with them. That's possible, that's definitely doable. You just have to work out the way that you're going to do it. If I think about more ways of doing things differently now than I would then I'm going to make a part 2 to this video. But for now, those are the main things that I would consider. And those are the main things that I would change if I was starting again. Hope that this has helped in some way. If it has, let me know. If you have any tips as well of things that you've learned along the way, or things that you would change, or the way that you would approach things, leave it in the comments. For new potters, new artists, join me next week for another pottery video where we will go into something. Maybe I'm making something. Maybe I'm having another yap like this one. Who knows? You can follow me on social media. This is part of my strategy. I'm at mae.ceramics on TikTok and Instagram, also Facebook. Not really there though, so I don't know, do what you will with that. I'll see you again next week for another pottery video, and I hope you have a lovely week. Bye.